Head-to-head for the first time with close to 100 million people watching. Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump square off in the race for the White House. They clashed on the economy, national security, foreign policy and racism. At times, it got personal.
I don't believe that Hillary has the stamina.
He tried to switch from looks to stamina, but this is a man who has called women pigs, slobs, and dogs.
So, who won the first of 3 televised encounters will be live in Washington, also this lunchtime. The owner of Alton Towers has been fined £5 million for last year's roller coaster crash, leaving 2 teenagers having legs amputated. Under investigation, the England boss, Sam Allardyce, is filmed apparently explaining how FA rules on player ownership can be avoided. Britain's first shipment of American shale gas will soon be unloaded in Scotland. And a special service remembers Sir Terry Wogan on the 50th anniversary of his first radio broadcast for the BBC.
Here, parents are forced to miss work and teach their own children after a special school fails to open. And slowing the progress of a life-limiting condition, families win a battle to get access to a new drug.
A very good afternoon to you and welcome to the BBC News at 1. It had an estimated television audience of close to 100 million people. The first face-to-face debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in the race for the White House. At times, it was antagonistic as they clashed repeatedly on the economy, national security, foreign policy, racism and sexism. And at times, it was personal. He accused her of lacking the stamina to be president and of having a failed record of public service. She claimed he had a cavalier attitude towards nuclear weapons and was someone who failed to pay his taxes. Well, our correspondent Laura Bicker is in Washington for us this afternoon. Laura.
There was no killer knockout blow on stage last night, Clive. What we saw instead was a Hillary Clinton who remained calm, composed throughout, as Donald Trump grew increasingly frustrated and flustered. The Snap poll suggests Hillary Clinton has edged it, but is her victory one that's decisive? My colleague Nick Bryant has this report.
America's never seen a reality show like this. A former First Lady head-to-head with a Manhattan property tycoon in a televised debate that blurred the lines between politics and celebrity. This is the first time they've shared a stage, and despite the faux niceties, it quickly became fight nice. They clashed over trade deals like NAFTA.
And I have
Your husband signed NAFTA, which was one of the worst things that ever happened to the manufacturing industry.
That is your opinion. Well, Donald, I know you live in your own reality, but that is not the fact.
She attacked the billionaire for failing to release his tax returns. He counterpunched by bringing up her use of a private email server as Secretary of State.
I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes when she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted. As soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns.
I made a mistake using a private email.
That's for sure.
And if I had to do it over again, I would obviously do it differently. But I'm not going to make any excuses. It was a mistake, and I take responsibility for that.
One of the angriest clashes came over Donald Trump's repeated claims over the years that Barack Obama was not an American.
I was the one that got him to produce the birth certificate, and I think I did a good job.
Well, just listen to what you heard.
Mr. Trump questioned whether she had the temperament to be commander-in-chief, having apparently seen her off stage at a campaign event.
The other day, behind the blue screen, I don't know who you were talking to, Secretary Clinton, but you were totally out of control. I said, there's a person with a temperament that's got a problem.
Secretary Clinton.
Woo, okay.
He also said that his female opponent did not have the stamina to be president.
And I don't believe that Hillary has the stamina.
Let's let her respond.
Well, as soon as he travels to 112 countries and negotiates a peace deal, a ceasefire, a release of dissidents and opening of new opportunities in nations around the world, or even spends 11 hours testifying in front of a congressional committee. He can talk to me about stamina.
The world.
Hillary Clinton looked and sounded like the more conventional presidential candidate, something Donald Trump tried repeatedly to turn against her. This was 90 minutes of vintage Trump that would have delighted his core supporters. But his task tonight was also to reach out to undecided voters, still unsure about whether he passes a basic presidential plausibility test. Nick Bryant, BBC News, Long Island.
US presidential debates are not just won or lost on stage. The spin that follows can be just as important. And here in America, viewers are waking up to wall-to-wall coverage. Donald Trump has already been on Fox News complaining about the questions he was asked, saying that they were the wrong ones. He also said his microphone wasn't working properly. Well, here are the first impressions of just a few of the millions who watched that first battle. After 90 minutes of trading blows, it was time to find a more welcoming arena. Her fans will see this as a victory lap.
We had a great debate!
But to win involves some spin. Donald Trump took the unusual step of entering the press room himself, as both candidates declared themselves the champion.
I thought we did very well, and I guess every online poll is indicating we did very well.
The political drama gripped viewers in the US. They cheered and jeered as the combat continued, but it's unclear what impact it will have.
Overall disappointed. You know, I didn't hear a lot of reasons to vote for either candidate. I heard a lot of tit for tat. I heard a lot of attacks.
I'm sure he gave it a try, and he didn't come off as stupid or insensitive as he normally would. And that I got to give him some respect on that one.
The debate was fun. It was comical. I got what I expected. Hillary represented totally. She said, check my resume and then come talk to me. Trump, on the other hand, gave a lot of fluff.
Around the world, they gathered for the contest. They tuned in China after searching for it online.
I
personally like Trump's character, and he feels like a fighter. But from today's performance, I think Clinton was more like a mature politician, and Trump looked like a bit of a misfit.
There was no humbling at the Hofstra, as some had anticipated, but the debate has made history, and not just in viewing figures. Amidst the noise, it's been forgotten that this is the first time a woman has been on the presidential debate stage. Well, how much impact do these debates actually have? Well, this, for the candidates, is about rallying their support as much as winning over undecided voters. So many voters have told me that actually when it comes to these two candidates, they're holding their nose and voting for them. It might just make them a little bit more decisive. And hey, there are still 2 debates to go and 12 days, Clive, until the next one.
This ain't over. Laura, thanks for that. Laura Bicker there in Washington. And BBC News Online has more analysis and background. That's at bbc.co.uk/news, and follow the links to Election 2016. And you can watch extended highlights of the debate too on the BBC News channel. That's tonight at 8 o'clock. Merlin Attractions, the company which owns Alton Towers, has been fined £5 million for safety breaches that led to the Smiler roller coaster crash last June. 5 people were seriously injured and 2 teenage girls had legs amputated. Their lawyers say they were shocked by some of the evidence they heard at the sentencing hearing. Here's Sophie Long.
This was the moment when the Smiler roller coaster crashed into an empty carriage, trapping 16 people for up to 5 hours, leaving at least 4 young people with life-changing injuries. The most seriously injured, Vicky Bouch, and behind her Leah Washington, with boyfriend Joe Pugh, who was also in the front row, have learned how to walk again after each having a leg amputated. Today they listened as those responsible were fined £5 million, believed to be a record fine for the industry. Symbolic closure, but no more for those dealing with the continuing psychological trauma.
My family support has totally broken down. That's my daughters and myself. We can't support each other because psychologically we can't, physically we can't. and that's a big breakdown.
Sentencing Judge Michael Chambers said this was a case involving a serious breach of care that put thousands at risk of death or serious injury and caused devastating injuries to a significant number of people. This was the first time they heard the full extent of the errors that led to their injuries.
A catastrophic failure to assess risk, inadequate training, inadequate supervision, inadequate management, failure to communicate, failure to put in place safe systems of work.
Merlin Attractions admitted breaking health and safety law and had been expecting a large fine.
The far bigger punishment for all of us is the knowledge that on this occasion we let people down with such devastating consequences. It is something none of us will ever forget, and it is something we are utterly determined will never be repeated.
Emergency services now say detailed risk assessments are in place for all rides at Alton Towers and at other theme parks across the country. Sophie Long, BBC News, Stafford Crown Court.
The Football Association is to investigate allegations that the England manager Sam Allardyce offered advice on how to bypass player transfer rules. In video footage secretly filmed by the Daily Telegraph, he also appears to negotiate a £400,000 deal to represent a company in the Far East. Mr Allardyce has yet to comment. Sports correspondent Richard Conway is standing by now. Richard, is Big Sam in big trouble?
Well, we'll have to see what his employers, the FA, think about that. They're meeting here at Wembley at their headquarters. And of course, Sam Allardyce was only employed by them on July the 22nd this year. This could be one of the shortest tenures as England manager ever, because they, the FA, face a key decision, whether to back him or sack him. It was, he said, his dream job. But Sam Allardyce's England reign is at risk of turning into a nightmare. The Daily Telegraph secretly recorded 2 meetings Allardyce and his advisers held with undercover journalists who claimed to represent a Far East company. It's alleged by the paper that a deal was struck worth £400,000 that would see the England boss travel to Hong Kong or Singapore to deliver what's described as keynote speeches.
And the fees will be sensible. I would have thought £100,000 a time.
Your guys set the agenda out of what it would look like. Me flying out on whatever day, landing in Hong Kong or Singapore, staying in this hotel, meeting these people, doing that keynote speech, travelling back either 2 days later or 1 day later.
Allardyce, perhaps importantly for his job prospects, insists in the video he must ask his FA bosses for approval over any deal. But what may be more concerning for the Football Association is that Allardyce appears to offer advice over how rules concerning third-party ownership of players, outlawed by the governing body in 2008, can be avoided.
I mean, third-party ownership problem.
It's not a problem now.
Yeah, I mean there are ways around that, as I understand it, or ways through that.
Yeah. We'll still get around.
Sam Allardyce should be preparing for his first home game in charge of the England team, but instead it's believed he's meeting FA officials to discuss his future. The FA, as the legal and moral guardians of the sport in England, must decide what action, if any, they will take, with some questioning if he can survive.
If he is to keep his job, at the very least, he has to provide the evidence where he says that agents are still involved in this, and he has to apologise for stating that these rules are, as he says, are ridiculous.
Now, just 67 days into entrusting Sam Allardyce with a mission to revive England's football fortunes, the FA must decide if his position is still tenable. There's acute embarrassment within the Football Association too over Sam Allardyce's indiscretion. He spoke in that video too about his predecessor Roy Hodgson and Gary Neville, his assistant, both of course who resigned after the European Championships. But those questions over his comments about third-party ownership will be what will be concerning FA bosses the most, and they must now decide if Sam Allardyce is to be entrusted to continue on with this job. OK, Richard, thank you for that. Richard Conway there at Wembley.
A 78-year-old man has been arrested in Berkshire on suspicion of the murder of a schoolgirl more than 50 years ago. The police inquiry into the death of Elsie Frost in West Yorkshire back in 1965 was reopened last year after a BBC investigation. John Manell has this exclusive report.
October 1965. A police investigation on a scale the city of Wakefield had never seen. A tunnel under a railway line. A 14-year-old girl repeatedly stabbed. Hundreds of people interviewed, but the killer was never found. Elsie Frost had been on her way home from a school sailing club. She was described as kind, intelligent, and was just about to become her school's head girl. Police reopened the files on her death last year, following an investigation by BBC Radio 4's IPM programme. Today's arrest comes more than half a century after the murder. Over the last few months, thousands of pages of written evidence have been examined. It's now almost 51 years since Elsie Frost was killed here, but in all that time, this is only the second arrest. The first was in 1966, when a man was charged with her murder, but was then cleared by the courts. The police aren't saying who they are now questioning, but the BBC understands his name is Peter Pickering. Elsie Frost's brother, Colin, was just 6 when she was killed. He was closely involved in the BBC investigation into his sister's murder.
As a family, we're very pleased. All we wanted was to be taken seriously. We were aware that mistakes were made in 1965, but we've been impressed with the commitment of West Yorkshire Police in the reinvestigation, the number of officers involved, the number of agencies involved. And all we wanted was for the investigation to be reopened, and that's what we've achieved.
A year ago, Elsie's brother and sister released these 14 doves, one for each year of her life. They say they'll mark the 51st anniversary of her death quietly, waiting for the outcome of the police investigation. John Manell, BBC News.
It is 17 minutes past 1, our top story this lunchtime. And close to 100 million people watch Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump clash on the economy, national security and racism in their first of 3 televised debates for the White House. And still to come, a moving tribute to Sir Terry Wogan, remembered at Westminster Abbey, marking the 50th anniversary of his first BBC broadcast.
Coming up on South Today, could driving into Oxford hit you harder in the pocket as politicians consider introducing a congestion charge and slowing the progress of a life-limiting condition? Families win a battle to get access to a new drug.
Scientists say they've discovered vast plumes of water gushing from the surface of one of Jupiter's moons. Proof, they say, of a giant underground ocean. Now, the jets of water were photographed using NASA's Hubble Space Telescope. And now the race is on between the Europeans and Americans to discover whether there might actually be life on the Europa moon. Our science correspondent, Palab Ghosh, has the story.
More than 350 million miles away, orbiting Jupiter, is a tiny, intriguing world. Scientists think that under its surface there might be a vast ocean, and where there's water, there might be life. These new pictures from the Hubble Space Telescope are the first direct evidence of an ocean under Europa. At the bottom left, jets of water, the largest of which is 100 miles high.
We've discovered these features here, which may be plumes of water emerging from that ocean. If that's the case, it's exciting because it's depositing material from the ocean on the surface of Europa and into space, and that means we can look for organics and even signs of life.
NASA and the European Space Agency both plan separate missions to the moon in 2022. The discovery of these jets now means that the search for life on Europa is now much easier. Instead of having to land and drill through meters of ice to see what's in the ocean, spacecraft can now fly through the jets, collect the water and analyse it for evidence of alien life forms.
I'm almost sure there is life of some kind out in our solar system. I'd be flabbergasted if there wasn't. I think the conditions seem to be right in a number of places. that I'm almost certain bacteria of some kind must be able to form in the liquid water oceans at some of the moons of Jupiter and of Saturn as well.
There's a new space race between the European Space Agency and NASA to get to Europa. Whoever gets there first could answer one of the most important questions for humanity. Are we alone in the universe? Palab Ghosh, BBC News.
There have been angry scenes at the Labour Party conference over attempts to curb the power of the leader Jeremy Corbyn. His supporters are accusing opponents of a stitch-up over new rules that could make it harder for him to change party policy. Well, our assistant political editor Norman Smith is at the conference in Liverpool. Norman, he won a thumping majority, a matter of days ago in the leadership election. What's going wrong?
Well, what we learned, Clive, is despite that massive majority, the battle for the future of the party is very far from over, and Mr Corbyn is not having it all his own way, prompting furious clashes on the conference floor this morning. It reminded me almost of the 1980s, a blast from the past, as delegates tussled over rule changes which will decide who controls the National Executive Committee. Why does this matter, you ask? Because if Mr Corbyn loses control of the party's governing body, then he won't be able to push through the sort of changes to policy, to rules, to his agenda that he wants to implement, prompting this reaction on the conference floor from some delegates.
The package going forth will gerrymander the NEC and allow for the decision made at the weekend to be vetoed by parliamentarians who are not accountable to this movement.
This party is a democratic party. This party should make its rules at its conference, one by one, and vote on each one of them. Anything less is not democratic, is not right.
What is essentially a stitch-up of the NEC?
Well, all that comes after yesterday. Mr Corbyn's team were pretty much forced to concede they're not going to be able to turn Labour into a unilateralist anti-Trident party, which tells us two things, Clive. One, Mr Corbyn's opponents are getting organised, and two, they're even winning some victories.
OK, Norman, thanks for that. Norman Smith there in Liverpool. The first imports of US shale gas extracted by fracking have arrived in UK waters. The shipment is due to dock at Grangemouth, brought in by the chemical company Ineos, which says it will help secure thousands of manufacturing jobs in the area. Victoria Fritz has more.
It weighs 20,000 tonnes and has come all the way from Philadelphia. Soon, 8 of these vessels will travel back and forth across the Atlantic, creating a seafaring gas pipeline between America, the UK and Norway. It's been 5 years in the making and it's cost £1.5 billion to establish. But here it is. The very first shipment of US shale gas arrives in Scotland, and the gas it contains will be used for the manufacturing of things like food packaging, of pipes and bottles. The processing plant at Grangemouth is thought to be worth about £1 billion to the British economy and supports the livelihoods of about 10,000 people. But the plant needs ethane gas to operate. The chemical giant Ineos says that with North Sea reserves dwindling, importing shale gas is the only way to keep these jobs safe.
There simply isn't enough raw materials left in the North Sea to operate Grangemouth. Grangemouth is a fabulous complex. It's the biggest chemical complex in the UK, biggest industrial site in Scotland, but it can't operate if there are no raw materials. So this is all about securing those 10,000 jobs.
The shale boom in the United States has dramatically reduced the cost of production, giving manufacturing in America a competitive advantage. But it has not come without cost.
Fracking can have really devastating impacts for the local environment and for human health. It's linked to water contamination, air pollution, and very serious public health outcomes. So we don't want that to happen here in Scotland, but we also don't want that to be happening in the US.
Around 120,000 jobs reliant on North Sea industries are thought to have disappeared since 2014. Today's high-profile arrival is designed to put pressure on the Scottish Government to lift their moratorium on fracking and provide longer-term security to the energy industry.
Victoria Fritz, BBC News at Grangemouth.
Let's talk now to our Scotland editor, Sarah Smith. Sarah, how does this shipment of shale gas square with the Scottish Government's moratorium on fracking?
Well, there's a certain irony, isn't there, that the first US shale gas to arrive in Britain is coming to Scotland, whereas, you say, there is a ban on exploring for shale gas at the moment. The Scottish Government say they will not issue any licences for fracking until they have been convinced that fracking is absolutely safe. And of course, you know that there are lots of environmental protesters who have serious concerns about the safety of fracking. But at a time when we've learned today 120,000 jobs lost in the North Sea oil and gas industry over the last year, it is difficult for the government to stand up to its critics who say we need fracking in the UK to provide jobs and some of the lost revenue that has come from the sharp drop in the price of oil. But a lot of SNP members are very vocal critics of fracking. They see environmental dangers in it, and so it's hard for an SNP-led government in Scotland to overturn this moratorium without it being quite a political problem for them.
OK, Sarah, thank you for that. Sarah Smith there at Grangemouth. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have braved torrential rain to visit one of Canada's most spectacular natural wonders. The couple visited the Great Bear Rainforest, dubbed the Amazon of the North. Our royal correspondent Peter Hunt is travelling with them.
A bumpy descent for a royal grandson on a mission that had to be curtailed because of the weather. The Duchess and the Duke were here to witness the preservation in the name of William's grandmother, the Queen, of the Great Bear Rainforest. A rainforest that on this occasion lived up to its name. They are the future of the Heldsick people, an indigenous community who live in Bella Bella, British Columbia, and who are committed to protecting the land their descendants occupied long before the European colonists arrived.
When we protect our rivers, oceans, atmospheres, or like today our forests, we are telling our children that their future prosperity cannot be disconnected from the health of the natural world.
The Great Bear Rainforest is the size of Ireland and is the world's largest temperate rainforest. It's now preserved for posterity under an initiative which has been called the Queen's Commonwealth Canopy.
Royal visits are carefully planned affairs, but they can go awry. It's meant on this occasion, even though the weather has now improved, that William and Kate have seen very little of this rainforest which they travelled so far to experience.
A break in the rain allowed William and Kate a peek at the natural beauty on offer. The 52 other Commonwealth countries are committed to following Canada's example. The protected lands across the globe will be in the Queen's name and will provide her with a lasting legacy. Peter Hunt, BBC News, Bella Bella.
A special service to celebrate the life of Sir Terry Wogan is being held at Westminster Abbey this lunchtime on the 50th anniversary of his first radio broadcast for the BBC. Sir Terry died in January at the age of 77. Our arts correspondent David Sillito has more.
Westminster Abbey and a gathering of family, friends and fans to celebrate and say goodbye to Sir Terry Wogan. The first tribute was from Chris Evans.
Terry Wogan wasn't the best. He is the best, and he will always be the best.
It's 2 minutes to 8 o'clock.
It was 50 years ago to the day that a young Terry Wogan made his debut on the BBC. He became part of daily life for millions. There were today 500 seats for the public, the listeners, the togs, Terry's old geezers and gals. 14,000 people applied.
Really happy to see so many friends that we've known for the last 20 plus years. I'm so sad to be here, but we loved him very much.
No one can say they never knew Terry, because what you saw and what you heard, that was him in real life.
Does it mean much to be here today for you?
Oh, it's a privilege, absolute privilege to be here.
It was also a chance to say thank you from friends and colleagues. The singer Katie Melua, her big break owed much to being championed by Sir Terry.
This is the closest thing to crazy I have ever.
What I loved most about Terry is the fact that he had the sense of the ridiculous and naughty, and yet he was a very well-read man and a very intellectual man.
Songs, poems, laughter, a few tears. It was goodbye, farewell, and thank you to an old friend. David Sillito, BBC News, Westminster Abbey.
Time for a look at the weather now. Here's Darren Bett. Hi, Darren.
Hello, Clive. We're seeing some changes in the weather today. There is some sunshine around, more than we had yesterday across Scotland here, around the Murray Firth into Northern Ireland as well, and that sunshine eventually edging its way into England and Wales, where for most it's been a bit of a dull, grey sort of morning. Bit of rain and drizzle too. Put those two places on the map from our weather watchers. You can see the extent of the cloud, but breaks are arriving into the northwest, mainly behind this weather front here, and this is where we'll find most of any light rain or drizzle. It's just edging towards East Anglia in the southeast, cloud breaking behind that as well. So some bright or sunny spells through the rest of the day for Northern Ireland, increasing sunshine in Scotland. Best of it's probably in the east. Some more showers though as the winds freshen in the northwest of Scotland, and we should break the cloud through the afternoon across northern England. Some sunshine also breaking through across Wales and eventually in the far southwest as well. But the rest of southern England, the East Midlands, across East Anglia, under a cloud and maybe a little bit of drizzle, but it's warm air, so temperatures could be as high as 20 degrees. The last of the cloud drizzle clears away this evening. The other end of the country, though, the winds continue to freshen for a while overnight. Gales likely for northern Scotland, some frequent heavy showers for a while too. By the end of the night, though, one way or another, we end up with some breaks in the cloud and temperatures will be down to about 11 or 12 degrees. Now, during tomorrow, the wind will freshen again. We'll find a spell of rain early and late for Northern Ireland, bit of sunshine in between. That rain leaves Northern Ireland, pushes into Scotland, increasing cloud across England and Wales, a little bit of drizzle around some western hills. Still some brightness and sunshine towards the southeast, and it's warm here as well, 22 degrees or so. Warmer for most of us, 20 where we see it brightening up middle of the day for Belfast, and 19 or so for Edinburgh too. So some warm weather around on Wednesday. Overnight into Thursday, two things to focus on. One, a weather front taking rain southwards. Next, though, is this deeper area of low pressure that's approaching Scotland. The winds pick up overnight and into Thursday. This is the windy day. Widely gusts of 50, 60 miles an hour across Scotland, possibly 70 miles an hour across the northwest. Some big waves are likely too, coupled with some frequent and heavy showers here as well. Remember that rain though on the weather front, it's trickling southwards away from the Midlands and Wales, heading towards southern England by the afternoon, and then we'll see a few more squally showers, not just for Scotland, but driving southwards into Northern Ireland, possibly into northern England as well. And then by the end of the week, we're all in pretty much the same boat, some sunshine and showers, but probably cooler, especially in the wind. Clive.
Darren, thanks for that. Now, a reminder of our top story this lunchtime. And Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump have clashed in the first of 3 televised debates in the race for the White House. That's it. Now on BBC One, it's time for all the news where you are. Have a very good afternoon.